The sun blazed over the academy courtyard, casting long shadows across the pristine stage draped with flags. Families filled the rows of folding chairs, proudly holding cameras and flowers, waiting for the graduation ceremony to begin. In the distance, a tall black man in a crisp, perfectly tailored suit walked toward the venue, his gait calm but commanding. Marcus Kane, a decorated Marine with 2 tours overseas, had come to witness the graduation of his godson, Tyler Brooks, a moment he'd promised to never miss. But as he approached the entrance, 2 security guards stepped into his path. "Sir, this is a private event," one said, crossing his arms. Marcus kept his voice steady. "I'm on the guest list." "Tyler Brooks, row 4. The second guard smirked, eyeing him from head to toe. "Yeah, we're going to need you to step away." No loitering. The crowd nearby glanced over, sensing tension. Marcus tried again, pulling out his invitation, but the guards didn't even look. "Not going to repeat myself," the first guard said. "You need to leave before we call the police." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he refused to raise his voice. "I serve this country. I have every right to be here." The smirk deepened. "Then go serve it somewhere else." What the guards didn't notice was a group of 6 men standing near the stage, watching the scene unfold. They weren't just guests. They were former Navy SEALs, all in sharp suits, all with a very personal connection to Marcus. One of them leaned to the others. "You seeing this?" Another cracked his neck. "Yeah, and I think these boys are about to learn who they're messing with." The SEALs began walking toward the gate, and the air shifted instantly. The guards were still blocking Marcus when the sound of firm, synchronized footsteps approached from behind. 6 tall men in dark suits cut through the crowd like a tide. Each one moved with the quiet precision of someone who had been trained for years to control a battlefield. At the front was Commander Jake Lawson, broad-shouldered with an unshakable stare. Beside him, Miguel Ghost Alvarez, whose mere presence made people step aside without knowing why. The rest, Stone, Harper, Briggs, and Rivers, fanned out in a subtle formation that screamed military. "Problem here?" Jake's voice was calm, but the weight behind it made the first guard's posture stiffen. "This is a private event," the second guard shot back, trying to sound confident. "We don't just let anyone waltz in." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Anyone. That anyone is Marcus Kane, U.S. Marine, Silver Star recipient, and the man who saved my life in Fallujah." The guards exchanged a quick, uneasy glance. The crowd was now fully watching, phones recording. Miguel stepped closer, his tone low but lethal. "You're telling a combat veteran who bled for this country that he can't watch his godson graduate? Think about that for a second." The first guard tried to recover his authority. "Rules are rules," Briggs chuckled darkly. "Funny, I remember a rule about respecting the people who protect your freedoms." Tyler's mother, standing inside the gate, finally noticed the standoff. Her face went pale. "Marcus, what's going on?" Before Marcus could answer, Jake looked the guards dead in the eyes. "You're going to step aside, or we're going to make this the last mistake you ever make in security." The tension snapped like a live wire. The guards hesitated, but their pride refused to let them back down. The first one planted his feet. "You don't intimidate me. I'm just doing my job." Jake took a single step forward, his shadow swallowing the guards. "Then you're doing it wrong." Miguel folded his arms, scanning the growing audience. 100 witnesses, half of them recording. "You sure you want your faces all over the internet for harassing a Marine at a graduation?" The second guard snorted. "We're not scared of a little video." Stone, the quietest of the SEALs, finally spoke. His voice was low, almost conversational. "You should be. I guarantee the moment this hits social media, the Academy Board will have you cleaning parking lots instead of blocking gates." The first guard's confidence cracked, just slightly. But instead of stepping aside, he reached for Marcus's arm. "Sir, I'm escorting you out." In an instant, Rivers was between them, hand lightly resting on the guard's wrist. It wasn't aggressive, but it was unshakable. "Touch him again," Rivers said softly, "and I'll make sure you can't shake hands for the rest of your life." The air grew heavy. the crowd whispered. Tyler, inside the venue, caught sight of the scene and started pushing toward the gate, panic on his face. Jake didn't raise his voice, but each word was sharp as a blade. You have 3 seconds to let him through. 1. The guards looked at each other. 2, before 3 could leave Jake's lips, a voice boomed from the stage microphone. Is there a problem at the entrance? It was the Academy's headmaster, and now every eye was locked on the confrontation. The headmaster, Dr. Langford, stepped down from the stage, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden steps. His graying hair and stern expression commanded respect, but the tension between the guards and the SEALs made even him hesitate for a moment. Explain, Dr. Langford said, looking first at the guards. The first guard straightened, speaking quickly. Sir, this man was loitering near the gate. No ticket in hand. We were just... Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but cutting. I showed them my invitation. They refused to even look at it. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Several people who had been recording started nodding toward Marcus, holding their phones higher. Jake added, and in case you're wondering, Marcus Kane is a decorated Marine. The only reason he's standing out here, instead of in his seat, is because your gate security thinks a black man in a suit must be trouble. Dr. Langford's jaw tightened. Is that true? The guards froze. The second one mumbled, We were just following protocol. Miguel smirked. Protocol doesn't include racial profiling. Dr. Langford's gaze swept over the scene, then landed on Marcus. Mr. Kane, Tyler speaks of you often. I apologize for this embarrassment. The guard shifted uncomfortably as Dr. Langford gestured toward the open gate. Please, come inside. As for you two. He turned to the guards, his voice sharpening. We'll be discussing your positions after this ceremony. The SEALs relaxed slightly, but their eyes stayed locked on the guards, making sure no more problems would arise. Marcus gave a polite nod and stepped through the gate, but his jaw was still tight. The damage had been done, and Tyler's big day had started with a wound Marcus wouldn't forget. What no one knew was that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As Marcus walked through the gate, Tyler rushed toward him, grinning wide despite the tension. Uncle Marcus, you made it! He threw his arms around him, but Marcus's hand lingered on the boy's shoulder, steadying himself. Wouldn't miss it for the world, kid, Marcus said, though his eyes flickered toward the guards still lingering by the entrance. The SEALs filed in behind him, spreading out casually among the crowd, but their presence was anything but casual. People were whispering now, glancing between Marcus and the group of 6 men who moved like a silent wall. Near the refreshment table, 2 parents murmured, Those aren't just friends. Those are Navy SEALs. Another voice added, I heard one of them's a commander. Why would they all be here? Up on the stage, the faculty tried to keep the ceremony flowing, but Dr. Langford's eyes kept darting toward the audience. He'd smoothed over the scene for now, but the weight of public attention hung heavy. Tyler looked up at Marcus. What happened out there? Marcus kept his voice low. Doesn't matter. You focus on today. This is your moment. Jake, standing a few rows back, overheard. We'll handle the rest, he said quietly, his eyes still locked on the guards, who now avoided looking anywhere near them. As the ceremony began, the national anthem played, and the crowd rose to their feet. Marcus stood tall, his hand over his heart, but his mind was miles away, back in deserts and jungles where trust meant survival and disrespect was never tolerated. This wasn't just about today's insult. In his world, when you mess with one of the Brotherhood, you answer to all of them, and those 6 SEALs, they were already planning the answer. The ceremony carried on, names being called, applause echoing in the warm afternoon air. To most, it seemed like everything had returned to normal. But among Marcus and the SEALs, an unspoken current flowed, a silent oath forged long before this day. Jake stood near the aisle, his eyes scanning the perimeter, like he was back on a mission. Each time the guards shifted or whispered to each other, his jaw tightened. Miguel leaned against a column, casually sipping water, but his gaze tracked every movement at the gate. Stone muttered to Briggs, You see the way they looked at him, like they were waiting for trouble to start. Briggs nodded slowly. They picked the wrong Marine to profile. Meanwhile, Marcus kept his composure, clapping for each graduate, though his mind replayed the confrontation in sharp detail. He wasn't angry for himself, he'd faced worse overseas, but for Tyler. This was supposed to be a day of pride, not prejudice. When Tyler's name was finally called, the crowd erupted. Marcus rose to his feet, clapping loudest of all. Tyler crossed the stage with a bright smile, locking eyes with Marcus for just a second. That look said everything. Thank you for being here. As Tyler returned to his seat, Jake caught Marcus's eye and gave a subtle nod. No words were needed. They'd been in enough firefights to know what it meant. This wasn't just about setting things right for Marcus. It was about sending a message, one that would make sure those guards never tried something like this again. And the moment the ceremony ended, the SEALs would put that plan into motion. The final name was called, and the crowd burst into applause. Caps flew into the air, laughter rang out, and proud families rushed toward the graduates. For most, it was the perfect ending to a milestone day. For Marcus and the SEALs, it was the calm before a storm. Jake, ever the tactician, leaned in toward the group. We keep it quiet, but they'll remember it. Miguel smirked. Quiet's not my style, but fine. Your call. Marcus was surrounded by Tyler's family, shaking hands and smiling for pictures, but every so often, his eyes flicked toward the gate. The guards were still there, stiff and uncomfortable, their earlier smugness gone. They avoided making eye contact with anyone, especially the SEALs. Stone stepped beside Marcus. We'll handle it. You focus on the kid. Marcus nodded. Don't cause a scene. Jake chuckled low. We won't, but they'll wish they'd never heard your name. As the crowd thinned, the SEALs naturally formed a loose perimeter, guiding Marcus and Tyler's family toward the parking lot. Just before reaching the cars, Jake veered off, motioning for the others to follow. They approached the guards, who straightened but said nothing. Jake stopped a foot away, his calm steel gaze locking on the first guard. You got a second? Jake's tone was polite, but beneath it was a pressure that could crack granite. The guard swallowed. Sure, Miguel grinned. Good, 'cause we've got a few things to explain about who you put your hands on today. And as the last of the guests disappeared from earshot, the real conversation began. The courtyard was nearly empty now, just the rustle of flags in the warm breeze. The guards shifted nervously as the 6 SEALs closed the distance, their polished shoes silent on the pavement. Jake kept his voice low, but each word landed like a hammer. You see, Marcus Kane isn't just a Marine. He's the man who pulled me out when I was pinned under gunfire in Fallujah. Without him, I wouldn't be standing here. Miguel stepped forward, his eyes locked on the first guard. And you? You tried to throw him out of a graduation because of the color of his skin. The guards opened their mouths, but Briggs cut in, his deep voice rumbling. Don't bother. We've seen your type before, hiding behind rules you barely understand. Stone pulled out his phone and held it up. We've got at least 4 angles of you refusing to check his invitation. This will look real nice on social media. Or maybe in a formal complaint to the Academy board. The second guard's face paled. Look, we didn't mean... Rivers' sharp laugh cut him off. Didn't mean, the moment you touched him, you crossed the line. Jake leaned in just enough for the guards to feel the weight of his presence. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Marcus and to Tyler's family before you leave this property. Then you're going to remember this day every time you put on that uniform. The guards glanced at each other, realizing there was no way out. And just as they opened their mouths to speak, Marcus himself walked back toward them. Marcus's steps were steady, his expression unreadable. The SEALs shifted slightly, giving him space but staying close enough to remind the guards they weren't alone in this. The first guard cleared his throat, his earlier arrogance gone. Sir, I want to apologize. We made a mistake. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then glanced at the second guard. The second one swallowed hard. We shouldn't have stopped you. It was wrong. I'm sorry." For a moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, with the quiet authority of someone who'd commanded men in combat, he replied, "You didn't just stop me. You disrespected the uniform I wore for this country, even if I wasn't wearing it today, and you embarrassed my godson on one of the most important days of his life." The guard shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his eyes. Tyler's mother, who had walked over, folded her arms. "An apology is a start, but this doesn't get erased." Miguel's voice was like steel. "We'll make sure the Academy board hears about it. You can expect a call." Marcus finally extended his hand, not in forgiveness, but as a soldier offering one last chance at dignity. The guards shook it, their grips weak. "You'll remember this day," Marcus said quietly, "and maybe next time you'll think before judging someone by what you think they are." The seals closed in behind him as he turned to leave. The guards didn't move, standing frozen under the weight of what had just happened. And though Marcus walked away, the lesson and the humiliation would follow them for a very long time. The group made their way to the parking lot, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. Tyler walked beside Marcus, still buzzing from the day, but he kept glancing up at his godfather with concern. "You okay?" Tyler asked softly. Marcus gave a small smile. "Better now. You did great today. That's what matters." Behind them, the seals walked in a loose formation, scanning their surroundings out of habit. They didn't speak much. Their job was done, and the message had been delivered. But there was a subtle satisfaction in their expressions. Jake finally broke the silence. "They won't forget this," Miguel smirked. "Neither will anyone who saw it. Those videos are already in the air." He tapped his phone. "A couple of military buddies with big followings are going to make sure the right people see it." Marcus shook his head with a chuckle. "You guys never change." Stone grinned. "You saved our skins more times than we can count. This was nothing." They reached Marcus's car, and Tyler's family gathered for a few last photos. Marcus stood tall, shoulders back, the earlier sting of disrespect replaced by pride for Tyler's achievement. As they loaded into their vehicles, Jake leaned against the door. "You know, you didn't have to say anything back there." "We would have handled it," Marcus met his gaze. "I know. But some lessons need to come straight from the source." Jake nodded. "Fair enough. Still, if they ever try something like that again..." Miguel finished the sentence with a grin. "They won't," and with that, the engines started, and the convoy of cars rolled out, leaving the Academy with more than just a graduation to remember. By the time Marcus got home, his phone was buzzing non-stop. At first he thought it was just friends and family congratulating Tyler, but when he glanced at the screen, his stomach tightened. Notifications. Dozens of them. One of the videos from the ceremony gate had already gone viral. Over 100,000 views in just a few hours. The caption read, "Marine vet blocked from nephew's graduation." Then 6 Navy SEALs showed up. Marcus clicked the video. It showed the full exchange with the guards, Jake and Miguel stepping in, and the moment Dr. Langford escorted him through the gate. The comment section was flooded. Unbelievable. Respect to Marcus Kane. Those guards need to be fired. This is why we record everything. Those SEALs, absolute legends, Miguel called, his voice half laughing, half serious. "Brother, you're trending. Don't be surprised if the news calls." "I didn't want this to blow up," Marcus said, rubbing his forehead. "Too late," Miguel replied. "And honestly, good. Maybe it'll make a few people think twice." An email notification popped up from Dr. Langford himself. It was short and formal, Marcus. "The guards involved have been suspended pending review. The board wishes to meet with you to discuss this incident further." Marcus exhaled slowly. Change was already in motion. From the couch, Tyler grinned, holding up his phone. "Uncle Marcus, you're famous now." Marcus shook his head with a faint smile. "I'm not the story kid. You are. This was your day." But deep down, he knew. Sometimes the fight chooses you, whether you want it or not. 3 days later, Marcus walked into the Academy's administrative building. This time, there were no guards at the door, just a receptionist who greeted him politely and escorted him to a conference room. Inside, Dr. Langford sat at the head of a long table. Beside him were 4 board members, their expressions carefully neutral. "Mr. Kane," Langford began, "thank you for coming. We want to address the events of the graduation and assure you that the Academy takes this matter seriously." Marcus nodded, taking a seat. "I didn't come here for apologies. I came to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." One of the board members, a woman with sharp glasses, leaned forward. "The guards in question have been suspended without pay pending a full review. We're also revising our security training protocols, effective immediately." Marcus listened quietly as they outlined new policies: mandatory anti-bias training, proper verification procedures for all guests, and a zero-tolerance stance on discrimination. "That's a start," Marcus said, "but change only works if you enforce it." Langford nodded, agreed. "And I want to personally thank you for handling the situation with restraint. It could have escalated." Marcus allowed a faint smile. "If it escalated, it wouldn't have been me you had to worry about. It would have been the 6 men standing behind me that drew a few uneasy chuckles from the table." As the meeting wrapped up, Langford stood and extended his hand. "I hope this experience doesn't overshadow your godson's achievement." Marcus shook it firmly. "It won't, but it will make sure I'm here to watch him graduate from college, too, without anyone stopping me at the door." That evening, Marcus met the SEALs at their usual spot, a quiet, dimly lit bar tucked away from the busy streets. The place smelled faintly of oak and smoke, the kind of atmosphere where old war stories felt at home. Jake was already there, leaning against the bar. "Heard you gave the Academy a nice wake-up call today," Marcus smirked. "They're making changes. Training, new policies, the works." Miguel raised his glass. "To progress, and to making sure no one pulls that stunt again." They clinked glasses, the sound sharp in the cozy silence. Briggs leaned back in his chair. "You know, we've been through firefights, ambushes, hell itself. But watching you stand there calm as stone while those guards tried to push you out." He shook his head. "That's a different kind of strength." Marcus took a sip, letting the words settle. "Calm isn't weakness. It's knowing you've got a wall of brothers behind you if things turn." Stone chuckled. "We weren't just behind you, Kane. We were ready to roll through." They laughed, but beneath the humor was something deeper, the kind of bond only earned through shared danger and unwavering loyalty. As the night wore on, they swapped old mission stories, each one ending in laughter or a quiet nod of respect. When Marcus finally stood to leave, Jake clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Anytime, anywhere, you call, we're there." "Doesn't matter if it's a war zone or a graduation gate," Marcus smiled. "I know," and with that, the Brotherhood's unspoken promise held stronger than ever. A week later, Tyler's graduation photo arrived in the mail, a perfect shot of him in his cap and gown, smiling with pride. Marcus placed it in a frame on his mantel, right next to his own Marine commendations. He stood there for a moment, remembering the heat of that day, the sting of the guards' words, and the weight of the SEAL's presence at his side. What could have been a bitter memory had turned into a lesson, not just for the guards, but for everyone who saw what happened. Tyler dropped by after school, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mom says people at church are still talking about what you did." Marcus shook his head with a smile. "What we did. You think I stood there alone?" Tyler's grin widened. "Those guys were awesome. They looked like they were about to take over the whole place." Marcus chuckled. "They would have, if I let them." The boy's expression turned serious. "I hope I have friends like that one day." Marcus rested a hand on his shoulder. "You earn friends like that by being the kind of man who'd stand up for them first." Later, as Marcus sat on his porch watching the sunset, his phone buzzed with a message from Jake. "Brotherhood's still on standby. Always." Marcus typed back 2 simple words: "I know." The graduation was over, the uniforms were in closets, and the crowd had gone home. But the memory of that day, the injustice, the unity, and the silent power of loyalty, would last for the rest of their lives.